give a bit of a talk on a very sexy topic called a communication on a policy document on energy. And you see the length of the yellow part. It's amazing. It's really snappy, but that's the way we give titles to our document. So the point is here we are looking at retail energy markets from a sort of consumer aspect point of view. And let me see. Yeah, here we go. And it's kind of a bit of a jargon business here, but there we have a set of 5 pieces of documents, and these pieces of documents fall under the energy union concept that you probably have heard of, and which is actually the new sort of policy push from Juncker's commission, who took over last year. So there's a big push towards developing the energy markets really towards a more of a union, not a Soviet Union, an energy union. And after the big speeches and political lines and things like that, so we've got now into a process where we start going more into the nuts and bolts of it. So that means that last summer, July, we came up with this set of documentation, which is looking at different parts of the angle. There's the first one, market design. This is about wholesale markets. I'm not going to talk about it. I'll talk about the 2 things here in red. The New Deal for the consumers, which is more the retail thing, and I'll say a word about the energy self-consumption, because that relates to a lot of what also previous speakers have spoken about. There are some other issues there about emission trading systems and things like that, which I will skip so that we win some time. So why did we come up with this new deal for consumers? Why was it relevant to do something like that? Well, if you have a look at the EU's energy policy so far, so what has happened since 2000, early 2000s? So the focus was always on the competition, on sort of breaking up monopolies, and getting a few technical things sorted out, building infrastructure and things like that. That was this building of the internal market, as we say. There was a little bit of consumer protection issues which came up, and the first things like you and me were able to switch suppliers, for instance. That was a sort of first step, but in a very traditional energy market setting, top-down, centralized, and all of that. So obviously now the big game changers are there. It's technology, it's the distributed renewables that you saw earlier already. And that's brought a new situation where we have to actually start looking also at the demand side, which means consumers and citizens themselves. So we've got to a situation of problems actually in the energy and in the climate field, that you cannot use anymore the old solutions that you fix something on the supply side, you look at how you deal with the generation and the big energy companies and that'll sort it out. No, it's not enough. So you have to look at also demand side. That's one of the big drivers. And these things, they hit the headlines. One of the problems was the price. On the right side, you have actually wholesale prices, exchanges, which show that wholesale prices actually were pretty stable or even stagnated. But we consumers, so we actually paid higher prices. Our energy bills went up. And that kind of a divergence was not a great thing. People are not particularly happy about that. And what you see here in the map is the red and green, they indicate actually the difference between energy prices, the sort of general price levels versus energy prices, how those have developed. So the red ones, red countries means that in those places, energy prices have gone up faster than all the rest, food and things like that. So it's pretty red, the continent. So that tells you something that, it's been a tough hike on the price side. Partly because of that, but not only, when we ran surveys, we do every 2 years these kinds of surveys of 35 different sectors in life, from mortgages, which are, by the way, the last point here, to to the green bars, which are the most popular ones, where you have usually entertainment, movies and things like that. So this is really a sort of a beauty contest, what people think of these sectors, and you ask them questions, how happy or unhappy are they there? So you see that electricity and gas are marked here, so they are always on the red. That's not very great. It tells something about what people think about those. Third point which came up, and actually one government fell because of this in Bulgaria, is energy poverty. So when you do these, we've gone through these years and years of economic crisis, financial crisis and all the rest, unemployment, etc., all this stuff. So actually, as a sizable number of people who cannot afford their energy bills, and energy being a pretty necessary product, I mean necessary service, so this is making people worried and for a real reason. So there's this, I would say, a science which starts to look into this and how to do something about it, and that's including ourselves now. And here, these kinds of traffic lights here, so it's one study we just did actually earlier this year on looking at where things are pretty tough and whether, where the situation is better in terms of, indeed, access to energy. So you have, Slovenia, Portugal, Cyprus, Romania, Latvia, Bulgaria on the red, and then Northern Europe pretty much on the top. So where it's cold, there's no problem with energy. Where it's a bit warmer, there is a problem. Well, that's the way it goes. Out of this, you look at all these kinds of different things, and you have the big political push that we need to do something about this, and actually you cannot fix it without really dealing with the citizens. So that's where the message from indeed our President Juncker came. And here you have a list of all these problems that you can find. What is not working? Why are, for instance, the consumers not active in the energy market? And it starts with lack of information. Somebody said just that you get to know in the best case once a month what you consume. Actually, often it's much less than that, unless you have smart metering. Transparency of offers is not great in the market. There where you have competition, actually. A lot of places you don't have any offer, any choice. Self-generation consumption, with no need to elaborate on here. Then the fact that tax, different kinds of levies, taxes have brought up the bills. I mean, these are things. The technologies are there, but have not been actually taken up in great numbers. And I think in this room there are people who are much more advanced, so you're not, you're not probably a representative group of people when I talk here about information and things like that. And energy services, those things that make it really easy and cheap to get on board on the energy transition, they are relatively rare still. Okay, so in this New Deal paper, we look at 3 areas. One of them is empowerment, what to do about things. So, okay, you start with a simple thing, information. Yesterday I saw a study at an event where it looked at people's tendency to switch supplier, the very basic thing. And people were asked in a survey that, what do you think, are you happy with your current contract? And people say, yeah. And so have you tried to change? 40% said no. And then they said, because, why? Because I have a good deal. Have you ever compared? Well, then actually most of the people said no. So people feel that they are getting a good deal, but they actually haven't checked. So this is the biggest issue. It's really about awareness. And that's why what we're looking at is coming up with measures by which we make access and frequent access, including real-time access to the consumption data. So we know what I consume, I know what it means in reality, also in my wallet. Okay, transparency of offers, comparability, clear, and then rewards. normally, I mean, why would I bother to be active in the market of energy? I mean, it's boring for the majority of people. Of course I don't if I don't have incentives. Okay, choice, big thing. We did a survey on this, comes up very high in the values or valuations of people. So we have to see how we can make choice easier, be it on classical stuff like switching, or going into self-consumption, or then demand response. You know, these are the more elaborate ways of participation. And then indeed what we can do to boost the collective schemes, cooperatives, and things which often are also developed through crowdfunding. So that's one part. The consumer rights and protection, another one. I won't go into that because I think it's a different case, but just to make the point. And then the smart part. This goes into how to get the technologies out there, how to block or remove barriers there which today keep them from getting ubiquitous. And their interoperability is one thing. We have a lot of smart home technologies. They are not taken up because the things just don't talk to each other. I mean, it's like that, the gadgets. Smart metering, you know, where that's been rolled out, it's a very important enabler, but there is public resistance if that gadget actually serves only the energy company to turn off you remotely. You know, not very popular. However, if you have the right functionalities in that you as a consumer can actually take out, you can use different types of value-added services, energy management, you can do things, you control, you know what's in there, so things change. And then networks, you know, there's a gatekeeper. Whoever owns the networks or controls them, which is the network company, so has the keys of the, you know, the treasure chest, because data is money, and out of that you bring out all the value. So you want to be sure that whoever manages this does it in a way that allows innovation to happen, and new companies, new entrants, service providers, ESCOs get to the market. And there's a bit of a fight on that. There are different models, some which really are quite good in allowing that type of things to happen, data hubs and things like that, and then some which are much more sort of protective of current systems. Okay? Self-consumption. Part of the package was indeed a document where we went through, sort of listed good practice in this area after going through the member states, seeing the bad and the good and the middle things. So looking at what would we recommend to the governments that, you know, you guys decide on this, but, you know, have a look at how you can make it simple to get into self-consumption. We want it to be simple. You know, how you can have when you have your feed-in tariff systems or things like that, that they are sustainable and that you don't change them, you know, after a year or two, do retroactive changes, things like that. I mean, you will, no, they're very practical things. But if you do it well, this is a great sort of improvement into the system, and actually it deals with a lot of other benefits in the energy system, also security of supply, many things. So this was looking at indeed the small scale projects and things like that. So there we have a very fresh document on that. Now, then here's a little quote from the State of the Union speech, and the important word here is actually cities. And I put that in there just because of that, since now, and this was not the case in the past actually, with the current policy, what we try to do, we look at not just the top level policy, typical top-down stuff, but also how you can, you know, bottom up, make things happen. And that's where mayors and the local authorities come into the picture. And this has now, I would say finally, been acknowledged in the policy making. This was last Thursday here in the European Parliament. We had this kind of a ceremony of the Covenant of Mayors initiative, which was born in 2009, and we have now there 6,500 mayors in 55 countries, Europe and beyond, goes all the way to Argentina and things like that. These are mayors who've take a political commitment, formal commitment, that they will beat the 2020 target of the EU. They will do better, particularly when it comes to CO2 emissions. So we got basically the crowd together, not all the 6,000, but enough to fill the parliament, and celebrate the successes so far, because now these cities are actually on a trajectory of 28% emission cuts, which is pretty good. We still have some time to go, so we have to see, of course, how it goes. But what we did there was we set up a new perspective to that, because there's a lot of push for that, particularly in light of the COP21, the Paris climate negotiations next month. And we wanted here to sort of flex the muscles of the local sector, put pressure on the governments to get the climate deal done. And at the same time, give a new perspective from 2020 to 2030 to this initiative. Put together their, expand it so that as it so far has focused on climate mitigation, so prevention. So now it actually combines climate adaptation measures, so when you have to adapt to a situation in a town or community. And then also access to energy, which can be, when you go beyond Europe, it can be access to electricity. But it can also be for energy poor people, how to make sure that they have access to this thing. So this was launched, and actually we have quite high expectations on that, and it's so far going well. Just one word on money. I think tomorrow you're going to have Katainen here, the vice president, talking, if I correctly understand. He's certainly going to say something about this Juncker Fund, the FC thing. I'm not. Horizon 2020, this is one of the sources to fund things like part of the Covenant of Mayors activities, and then many other activities which are done in the smart city area and so on. There was actually just a call published in a few days ago on that 16 billion, which went into R&D in this area for 2 years. And then out of that, indeed, 232 million, which goes into all kinds of energy, environmental, transport, and things like that projects. Okay, here are some places where this money has been used in the past and will be used in the future. So we stay on the local level now. From those mayors, so we go to the community energy initiatives and the cooperatives. This is something, again, that is now in the energy union actually visible. It wasn't in the past. So it's a kind of acknowledgement that, look, centralized business, it's no longer going to work. You have to do a combination of many things, and the energy cooperatives are an exciting and important part of this. So that's coming here. So this is talking about the ResCoop, you probably know this, cooperative project, and some of the projects which are underway are mentioned here, and that's the kind of thing which is going to grow and develop here. And then, since we're in a crowdfunding conference, so I mentioned here one of those projects again, Citizens Energy, you probably know this. That's the crowdfunding platform. Difficult one. And reading their website, so I noticed they say they want to be the booking.com of crowdfunding. I don't know if that, how realistic is that, or is that, but I think the idea is good. So get more visibility to this form of funding, because you have to get to that when you are getting the local level active in this project. That took me to the end, 2 minutes over time, sorry about that, but thank you anyway.
Thank you, Eero.